you start to realize events are just events, and the meaning is what drives our emotions and our behavior, but you get to choose the meaning. The event doesn't have any meaning. We give it meaning.
Welcome to Messages from the Body. My name is Kelly Vanyai and I'm a hypnotherapist. And Rebel Black, human agronomist, has asked me to take her into a trance so that she can receive messages for the collective from the body. As a human agronomist, Rebel knows exactly how to get the best out of people in whatever circumstance they're in life. So this podcast is for people who are looking to understand their behaviour, human behaviour, understand maybe what's going on in the collective and what it is that we're looking to shift at the moment. And if you're interested in listening to the channeling itself, we invite you to follow the links in the description below. Welcome back, Rebel, for another Messages from the Body.
I'm so excited.
So I'll start by taking you into a quick trance, and then we'll see what comes up. It was at this point of our conversation that I took Rebel into a light trance using hypnotic inductions to allow her to receive messages that are stored within her body as a representation of the body of the collective. We'd now like to share with you the conversation that followed that channeling, where Rebel and I are discussing the topics that came through. Feeling fully refreshed, wide awake. Welcome back.
Thanks.
That was wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cultivation of faith and the acceptance of this process, I think, is such a valuable thing for us all to know at this time. We may be trying to avoid the fact that there's a reckoning coming.
Yeah.
But it sounds like if we lean into it, it's all going to work out fine.
Yeah, I really got the sense that it's the suffering we fear. It's the suffering we fear, and so then that creates resistance.
Mm.
Yeah, and like, why wouldn't you be afraid of suffering? It looks awful from the outside, awful when you're in it.
But on the other side, we often forget what that suffering was. You know, it's a natural part of the process as well. People go back and have babies numbers of times, and the body has a way of forgetting the pain.
It's like there's a chemical release that stops, that remembering, until I've had several women say to me, they're going into labor for the second or third time. They're like, oh no, I remember this. Why did I do this again? But they know the joy that comes. And I really got the sense that there's a resistance to, I could even feel my own human resistance as the channeling was coming through.
Mm-hmm.
But what about all the people who, with the birthing metaphor, where there's real tragedies and people losing babies and all kinds of things that come around that. It would be very difficult to make sense of that outside of the context of suffering. It's like, how could you not suffer? It's a human thing, but is it a human thing to suffer, or is grief and sadness at a loss or at a very difficult time different to suffering? Like, I could feel my humanness really wanting to be like, that's not true. Think of all the people I know that have struggled. Yeah. So there was part of me saying, no, I don't want that. That's not true. Suffering is not optional. Suffering is requisite. And do we suffer for others as well? I wonder that.
Well, that was something I wrote down, was the rescuer victim archetypes coming in some of the things that you were saying around like how we judge things as bad. If we see somebody else going through a challenging moment and our inclination is to jump in and try and fix it for them, we don't allow them to build up that muscle that you were talking about, the muscle of courage and the muscle of knowing that even though things get hard, sometimes you have the capacity to get through it individually. Like, that's something that we take away whenever we go through something really challenging. And that feeling came in with some of the stuff you were saying to, like, let's let go of judgment. Then we'd also be letting go of that rescuer-victim relationship, which frees us up to be more in that creator space where we accept the challenges and we know we have that faith as a humanity and as individuals to actually get through anything that comes our way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, because it's even at a collective level, you could see people retreat to that victimhood as a matter of course or habit, really. Go to the struggle and the suffering. Oh, we can't do this. This is hard. And where's the government? And, why aren't those people fixing that problem? And we let them to a large extent instead of being like, no, you've got this. You can do this, in the same way that in a birthing room, I imagine that's what's going on, is that the nurse and the doctor and the partner and, is cheering that woman on. You've got this. You can do this, despite her reactions in that struggle. It's not that because in that metaphor, you cannot, like, one way or another, that baby's coming out.
You can't stop that process once it's started.
No. So it's really difficult to victim rescue in that scenario. All you can do is champion and then build support mechanisms around that human,
I think people do try and go into the victim rescuer.
Sure. There's
but it's not very useful. There's no point to
it. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because if we think back to if we think about the evolution of humans, lots of women died in childbirth not that long ago. Women still do. Babies die in childbirth. People are damaged in the process. Like, if we remember the innate wisdom and we have faith in the innate wisdom, surely there's a purpose to that.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to grapple with that, especially when you're a party to that.
100%.
Those terrible, horrible, very difficult to get through experiences.
And yet I've heard all sorts of different messages from people who have, channeled information from a baby that maybe had died at birth. And that soul is absolutely happy and grateful that they got to go through that experience, because in one way it burnt off a whole heap of the karma that they'd accumulated. Or it was an experience of being able to actually allow the mother to go through grief, which we judge as bad, but from the soul's perspective, I've heard that it's a valued experience as much as joy is. And they're the things that I have to apply the faith to in my own life, because it is so easy to go down the path of that's bad and we shouldn't have to go through that. But then we don't know on a cosmic level just what benefit that is giving us, just what strengths that is allowing our soul to have. And that's where
right.
I try and come back to.
Yeah, and it is the good or bad, that righteous judgment that makes it, that has us deem particular emotions as better or worse or to avoid. But you're right, it doesn't, like, within, you don't know what soil that's cultivating for what future growth.
Exactly.
That experience of deep grief or loss, or that a rush that you would get when you go through something difficult and you're on the other side of it. You don't know what soil that's cultivating for future forests in your life.
Definitely not at the time.
No, it's like that. I always think about cumulative wisdom. Like, I've often thought about the concept of cumulative wisdom, that you are, if you can approach life, that you are going through this thing, all of the good and the things we would judge as not good, in order to be wiser at some other point in time as yet unknown, but that it'll come through with value somewhere.
It makes going through those hard moments much easier when you have that in mind.
Yeah, and and then I think, and even if it's the placebo, does it matter?
Exactly.
Like, we're meaning, the humans are meaning making machines. It's sort of how we're hardwired. And so I was like, well, you can make meaning one way or another. Would you make meaning that makes you feel better or feel worse? I don't know. I'm going for feel better every time if I can. It might have to do it down the track. Don't always get to do it in the moment because I forget. But yeah, I'm like, if you're gonna be a meaning making machine, you might as well make meaning of things that so you feel good about it. I even laughed about this the other day because I was in the car with mum and we were headed out of town and the car made this weirdest noise. Like it's never made it. It sounded like it was dragging something from one of the wheels. And so I pulled up and I looked under and I'm like, oh, that's weird. No, there's nothing there. I couldn't see anything. So I'm driving off. It's not really making the noise anymore. And I'm, steering the car in weird ways to try and see if I can make it sound. No, it doesn't. Mum says, turn left here and drive around the block so we don't leave town, with a problem. We'll go and fix it. So I turned left and next minute we're onto the next road where we could continue to leave out of town. I'm like, well, the car's fine. And as we drive on that road, so we're fully confident, got full faith now in the car, we realized if we'd kept driving straight ahead, we would have ended up at roadworks and had to turn around and come back in the way we went anyway.
Wow.
And so I said to Mum as well, the car knew. The car just knew we were meant to go that route instead of the other one. It was like by design. She said, oh, you make meaning of everything. And I'm like, yeah, why not? It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And it brings me back to the first episode when you were talking about like going through doors. And you would have seen the noise as like a closed door of stop driving, but actually you didn't. You saw it as an opportunity just to see, and then actually it turned out to be an open door, and the car directing you through the actual open door of the most ease in that moment. I love that.
Yeah, I know. I was like, thanks, car. Thanks, universe. Thanks,
so
car. And it's fun instead of it being instantly go into challenge mode. Oh no, there's something wrong with my car. Disaster struck, and it's like choose your own adventure. And I said at the time, I said to Mum when she said, oh, you make meaning of everything, I was like, well, we are machines like that, so why not make meaning that has you laugh and feel good even in a challenging moment, which that really wasn't, but instead of using the same program to make you suffer.
Yes, and it is a very important practice that when I remember back to, I used to be such a worrier, and somebody explained to me that we don't know what the future holds yet. And so I'm just making up the meaning that the problem is going to arise. And I'm spending all this time stressing in my body, thinking about something that may or may not even happen. So why not spend that time thinking about the best possible scenario, living in the good feelings in my body, and then just seeing what happens when the time comes and letting it play out as it does and dealing with the thing if it happens in the future, rather than spending the next 6 months thinking about it in a way that actually causes stress for myself.
Absolutely.
And it was such a hard thing to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
But if people can do that, it does free up so much of your resources to spend actually living in acceptance and responding to things like, oh, that's interesting, I wonder what that means, rather than, oh no, something's wrong, like you just said.
Yeah.
And I found that a lot more good things happened in my life once I started doing that too.
Yeah. I often encourage clients to get their have I talked about this before, but they get their table of the Knights of the Round Table is the exercise I call it. But it's like, what would 12 other people make of that scenario or that event? What meaning would all of those other people make? And in the same way that you eliminated worries, it's like, well, what would 12 other possibilities of that be that these other 12 people would give? So you can ask your brain's trust, Auntie Mary and the grocer down the road and, famous people that you admire. What meaning would they make of that event, or what possibility would they frame around that event? And then you start to realize events are just events. And the meaning is what drives our emotions and our behavior, but you get to choose the meaning. The event doesn't have any meaning. We give it meaning.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I just wanted to drop in is this idea of, and I'm not sure whether it's decisions, but there's this intersection of intuition, inspiration, and intelligence. And at the intersection of that, if you imagine the Venn diagram, is our best life. But mostly what we do is we use our intellect. And what you're talking about is using the muscle of inspiration, which is your imagination. Other eye, that kids are so good at. And I think we talked about looking at the children in one of the last 2 episodes.
Both of them, yes.
Yeah, like following the children, because and it's the same. It's like kids have got grand imaginations. And then for some reason, at some point, we're told, that's not reality, because we get more and more conditioned to be this sort of 5 sensory body, and that your only experience of reality is through the sensory body. Whereas kids live in their imagination. They're endlessly playing games and making cubbies and building forts and all those sorts of things. They live endlessly in their imagination. And yet that's something that as adults we're told is ridiculous, or get your head out of the clouds and those sorts. At some point that changes. And I think bringing that back, cultivating intuition, really cultivating inspiration and imagination, and then following the inspiration, and then using the intellect in equal measure, will end up with this beautiful, magical life in the middle.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful focus for us all to move towards. I love it.
I know.
Well, thank you, Rebel, for such an amazing channeling again.
It's my pleasure. It's super fun. I love it.
So much great stuff coming through, and all very relevant to what the collective is going through at the moment and where we're headed. So we're very grateful for you and for all of the messages that come through.
My pleasure.
And what another amazing channeling. Thank you so much to Rebel's incredible wisdom that we all have access to. But thanks to Rebel for knowing how to access it so that she can share all of this great stuff with us. It sounds like it's really our invitation to stop judging ourselves and remember that a lot of the judgments that we've created have come from our childhood experiences. And so I invite you, through whatever method that it is that you do this work, to look at the meanings that you have created and start to see if there is a new meaning that you can apply to different experiences in your life. One that removes the assumption that things are automatically bad just because they're difficult. And so thank you for tuning in to another episode of Messages from the Body. We're very excited to have you back again for our next episode, and we'll be looking forward to sharing the links with you soon.